Okay, so we shall continue with the 7 conditions of welfare. So you scroll on next all the way.
No more watching.
So it's like a quick run through of the previous lessons. Okay, next. Continue the next slide. It's towards the end actually.
Kim Fat, I think you need to move on to the next slide.
Looks like he missed the video a lot.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe escape, then you go on to the last few slides.
Is that the 7 conditions of welfare of the nation?
Really, can you? Sharon, can you help me to share first? I settle some issue.
Okay, hold on. Just give me a moment to open up the slides. Okay, 7
Probably around 30.
conditions.
7 conditions of welfare of a nation.
Okay. Stop.
Down. Further down.
Okay, this one. Or is this the one? 7 conditions? Before
that. Before.
Clear the thing over before you walk.
Okay, the Vajis is okay. After
This
the
one?
Vajis. Okay, next.
Sorry.
Next one.
Next.
After the Vajis.
Vajis.
Yeah,
This
this
one?
one we covered already, yes.
Yeah. This one?
Yeah. Okay, next. Okay.
Oh, okay. This? Bante, do I move further?
Previous.
Previous?
Yeah,
7
this one.
conditions. Okay.
Yeah. Because the previous one is the Vajis one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is the okay, yeah, so this is the Vajis one. We finished already. Okay.
Yeah.
So tonight we'll extend on how can a practitioner, because we've seen in the previous lesson how can Buddhist communities be engaged in battle, how can they be instigated to battle with wrong understanding. So the Buddha has laid down lots of teachings, lots of conditions to make sure the Buddhist community is in harmony. But this context is mainly for the monks, but of course you can extend out to the layperson. You need to pick which one is suitable for you, and also certain of the points are you need to take in context to apply for the layperson. Okay, so these 7 conditions for welfare of the monks, for the monks or even for the Buddhist community to grow. So earlier on was for the country. So now the Buddha kind of transposed it to the Buddhist context. Okay, so the first condition, bhikkhus means monks. So long as they assemble frequently and in large numbers. So earlier on the Vajis also assemble regularly. So for the Buddhists, right, if you want to flourish, you need to come for activities. A lot of time Buddhists only come to temple when they have problem. Other religion, they let's say maybe the Christians or the maybe the Muslims, they go to the place of worship at least once a week. The Buddhists don't do that. They only come to the temple and pai when there's problem or when there's special occasion, then they come over. So you need to come regularly. So it mentions frequently and in large numbers. So very interesting, this one here. Some people may have a misunderstanding that if you want to practice well, you have to be in solitude and seclusion like all the time, which is not true. So when there's time to gather, you should gather. Sometimes you spend for your own seclusion, sometimes you need to be in large groups. Some people are so extreme, they like to be alone so much, it becomes more towards craving towards introvert lifestyle. They are so happy alone, but when they mix around with crowd, then a lot of suffering, a lot of stress. So that is not the ideal state of mind. So the real ideal state of mind, one should be unattached or unaffected when they are alone or even in large groups. Okay, so this one is frequent assemble in large numbers. So this is the first one. Second condition, meet and disperse peacefully and attend to the affairs of the Sangha in concord. So similar to the Vajis, they come and meet peacefully and they disperse peacefully. So whatever Buddhist function you all have, you come together, conduct the service or the function peacefully, and everyone live happily. So that's the second condition of welfare. So if a person goes to a group and then quarrel and fight, there's no incentive to come back again. So you need to go there happily. So the third one, so long as they appoint no new rules and do not abolish the existing ones, but proceed in accordance with the code of training Vinaya laid down. So in the Vajis, case of the Vajis, they are talking about the constitution of the country. So for the Buddhist precepts, the rules or the teachings, we don't suka change lah. If you change, then it's like whatever the Buddha taught, he discovered, then it's like you waste his discovery. You kind of like subvert the thing. But of course, down the line, the Buddhism is passed through oral tradition and then later recompiled, re-edited by the compilers into the chanting format. So a lot of the scriptures now may not be exactly how the Buddha said it, the format especially. So again, we try our best to follow the early sources as much as possible, and the main thing is to apply and practice and see whether the Dhamma leads inwards to inner peace. So that would be the benchmark. Okay, next. Doesn't want to move. Okay. Okay, then the fourth point, so long as they show respect, honor, esteem and veneration towards the elder bhikkhus, those of long standing, long gone forth, the fathers and leaders of the Sangha, and think it worthwhile to listen to them. So this one is similar to the Vajis, they listen and respect to the elders. So in the monastic rule, the monks are sort of lined up according to their seniority in terms of how long they ordain. So before the Buddha passed, before this Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the last days of the Buddha, the monks address each other as friend. And the junior monk addressed the senior monk as friend, the senior monk addressed the junior monk as friend. So everybody friend. So like there's no distinction between like the elder or junior monks. So in this sutta, before the Buddha passed away, the Buddha kind of like made it like a protocol for the junior monks to call the senior monks Bhante. That means more like respectable term. Then for the senior monk, they still can call the junior monk friend. So there's some changes towards the end of the Buddha's career. And when the monks were kind of, before the rule was set on who is more senior, who is more junior, the monks were like having a discussion to see, who should be in front, who should be behind, who goes to the front of the queue to get the food first and stuff like that, or who sits in front to receive gifts. So they had a discussion. So some of them would say, those maybe in the higher caste system should be in front, those in the lower caste should be behind. Then another monk disagreed, and they said, no, those who are more knowledgeable should be in front, those who are less knowledgeable behind. Then another monk refuted, said, no, those who realize the truth should be in front, those who don't realize should be behind. So it becomes very chaotic how to measure who is realized or not realized. So the Buddha came and he said, implemented that whoever ordained earlier should be in front. So that's how this kind of seniority come about. So the Buddha laid down the rule in terms of seniority. So it's like a Buddhist protocol, even for monastics. If we see someone kind of ordained before us, then we will anjali and put our palms together and pay respect. So there's some slight difference between the Theravada culture and the Mahayana culture. In the Mahayana culture, everybody will put their palms together and anybody can pay respect to anybody. But in the Theravada culture, only the monastics can do this to the monastics. The Theravada monks can only anjali, put their palms together to the monastics, and they cannot do this to the layperson. So this is the Theravada culture. A bit hierarchical, I would feel, but yeah, that's the culture. Okay, then the fifth one. So long as they do not come under the power of that craving that leads to fresh becoming. So I think from this point onwards, then there's some slight difference from the Vajis, the 7 conditions of welfare of a nation. So this one is more spiritual already. So for the fifth point, that means do not come to the power of craving. So this one again, you have to practice in line with the Four Noble Truths to overcome craving. Ultimately, if we overcome craving, then you live by the teachings. Okay, then the sixth one. So long as they cherish the forest depths for their dwellings. So this one basically likes seclusion, physical seclusion. So down here when they mention forest depths, if you want to take in larger context, maybe some places not accessible to forest, the Buddha gave mention of secluded buildings even. So especially you can find it in the Anapanasati Sutta on breath meditation. At the opening, the Buddha mentioned the venues and what are possible venues for you to cultivate. So it's not just a forest, you can find an empty or quiet place as long as it doesn't disturb your meditation, then that would be an ideal spot. And vice versa, a person who is not ready, mentally not ready, may not prosper in physical seclusion if their mind is not mature. So there's a case, I always give the example of this Meghiya Sutta. There's this monk who is not mature and he wanted to go and practice alone. He was attending to the Buddha. Then he walked past a forest. He wanted to meditate alone. And he asked the Buddha for permission to go and meditate alone in the forest. And the Buddha disapproved. He asked this monk to wait for more companions, more monks to accompany him and meditate together. So this monk is like, how come? I thought you promoting seclusion. Then he asked the Buddha 2 more times. So after the 3rd time, the Buddha keep rejecting. So after the 3rd time, then the Buddha said, okay, do as you please. Do as you please. So when he is meditating in the forest, he doesn't have the skill, he doesn't have the proper technique. The mind is not mature enough. So whenever in the forest, the weather change from cold to hot, hot to cold, wet to dry, dry to wet, raining and stuff like that, then the mind is complaining, full of craving, greed and hatred. His mind cannot settle down. All the insects, all the wild animals, all the creatures disturbing him, so he cannot meditate in peace. So after some time, he went back to the Buddha and reported to the Buddha what happened. No, he cannot meditate. So the Buddha told him, see, I told you already, have to wait for more people. So for beginners, please do not rush to the forest and meditate alone. The grounding or the foundation is first have good spiritual companions. That means spiritual friends. You need to have a good peer support system. So when the mind engages in conversation, talk about the teachings, talk about the precepts, how you apply them in your workplace or in your family. And once you reach a certain maturity, spiritual maturity, then you can talk about meditation. So that is actually for the seclusion part. So this point again is meant for probably the monks who are more established, because this is the last final years of the Buddha, so the monks already practiced with him for so many years. So point number 6, you have to take in context. These are veteran practitioners, or even for layperson, if you have been meditating for quite a while, you think you like seclusion, then this might apply to you. So for layperson, it is encouraged every new moon, quarter moons and full moon days. So in the Sri Lanka, they call it the Boya days. In the Pali, they call it Uposatha days. These are the days where people, in the past, they are not using the Gregorian calendar in India. They use the lunar calendar. So basically, it's like every weekend. Every weekend, you go to the temple or place of worship, and you find some seclusion to practice some meditation. So that is what the Buddha encouraged for seasoned Buddhists. So aside from going to the temple, go for your service, you need to find some time for your mental kind of resilience, mental solitude. So that's point number 6. Okay, then point number 7. So long as they establish themselves in mindfulness, so that virtuous brethren of the order who have not come yet might do so, and those already come might live in peace. So basically, the monastery or the place they live, if they practice correctly, then those monks who visit or come and stay can live in peace. So if the community do not practice, then it becomes havoc, every day quarreling and stuff like that. So the Buddha mentioned this a lot, because in the Buddha's time also there are lots of troublemakers. We'll go through that in future lessons. Lots of case studies on troublemakers. So the popular one would be this Venerable Devadatta. So he caused schism and lots of issues with him. Okay, so long bhikkhus has these 7 conditions leading to welfare, and they are among the bhikkhus, and the bhikkhus are known for it. Their growth is to be expected, not their decline. So you might think 7 is enough, and the Buddha said no, not enough. He goes on more sets of 7. So you see a whole list of, like a checklist of things to do. Okay, next. Okay, further 7 conditions. So another 7 set of things to do. So the growth of the bhikkhus is to be expected, not their decline, because so long as they do not delight, are not pleased with, and are not fond of, number 1, activities. That means do not engage in too many activities, social activities or activities not related to their practice. So that's number 1. That means basically prioritizing their time. And number 2, talk. Do not talk too much. So that's the issue. So earlier on we talked about idle chatter. So if a person do not engage in idle chatters, they save up lots of time and energy. Okay, number 3, sleep. Do not delight in sleep. So in a lot of forest monasteries, they sleep very little. I remember as a junior monk at Johor, the Santi Forest Monastery, the junior monks, we have to wake up like 3+ a.m. in the morning and prepare the main shrine and ring the bell before 4 a.m. Maybe 3:30 they ring the bell already. So that's the morning time, and they do their meditation until like 6, then do their chanting, arms round and so on. So in the evening, after the evening chanting, from 7 to 8, then they meditate another 2 hours to 10 p.m. So that's for normal days. That's the ending time, 10 p.m. But in the rains retreat, they extend the meditation from 8 to 12 midnight. So we sleep only from 12 to 3+ a.m. So that's for the 3-month rains retreat. So we are so deprived of sleep. And one of the reasons they give is, if you are lacking of these basic essential necessities, then the mind won't think of other hanky-panky things. So that's the rationale. So if a person is kind of sleep little, so that's the ground-up approach. But if we talk about top-down approach, if let's say maybe like the Buddha or some other skilled meditators able to lower their metabolism, they might sleep little. Or maybe in terms of biology, some old people who are elderly, they might sleep little. So that's for the 3rd point. And the 4th point, company. Okay, so this company again is meant for those who already, how do you call it? We don't call it spiritual friend. Now this company is company in doing all kinds of other mundane activities. So this is the 4th kind. The mind doesn't like seclusion, they like company and socializing. So that's the 4th point. Okay, then number 5th. So long as they do not harbor, do not come under the spell of evil desires. So very similar as the previous one. And number 6, have no bad friends, associates or companions. So number 6 is basically got to do with the company. So if you have spiritual friends who ask you to do the good things, that's fine. But if the company is just for enjoyment and entertainment, then slowly reduce. Okay, then number 7, and so long as they do not stop halfway on account of some trifling achievement. So basically, the last point is asking people to be hardworking. So if let's say you practice something, can be meditation or your chanting or whatever, and the whole idea is repetition, right effort. Okay, next point. Okay, then another 7 set. So you think of 2 sets of 7 not enough? Then you have the 3rd set of 7. Okay, the growth of a bhikkhu is to be expected, not the decline, so long as they have faith. So that's the first point. Now you need to have faith in the triple gems, the Buddha, that means his instructions, the teacher, and the second point, the teachings, the instructions, and third are basically the guides, the Sangha, the mentors or the spiritual mentors or companions. So that's the faith part. Okay, then the second point, so long as they have moral shame. So moral shame means after doing something wrong, then you feel, you're not right. Moral shame. Then the third one, moral fear. Moral fear means before you do something bad, then you feel, there's something bad will happen, There's evil, there's bad consequences. Could be karma, could be a bad afterlife, could be the hell. Fear, So fear of doing something wrong. So you need to have these two: moral shame, moral fear. So basically, that's your conscience. So normal people, most of us, we think conscience is like a norm, but actually no. The level of conscience is conditioned by the deeds you do. So the more a person do unwholesome things, their tolerance for this moral shame and fear will kind of change. So their ethics, the ethical will shift. Their benchmark will shift. So it's good to have some, from culture to culture or from religion to religion, different people will have different moral compasses. Different moral compasses. So what is right to you may not be right to another group. What may be right to another group may not be right to you. Maybe in a secular society, for adults, maybe drinking alcohol is alright, but for the Buddhist context, drinking alcohol is wrong according to Buddhist teaching. So to those non-Buddhists, they drink alcohol, not doing anything evil. What? But for the Buddhists, because we have this teaching, so it's part of the perception. Then before we touch the alcohol bottle, I want to reach out and if you're wrong, cannot do it. So there's some moral shame and fear. So moral shame and fear is very subjective to the teachings you receive, your perception. So it depends on the faith, what kind of faith you have, what kind of upbringing. So it will determine the amount of moral shame and fear in whatever actions you do, whatever thoughts you think, and whatever speech you're about to say. So every culture will have a different kind of set of values. So the Buddhist values, we say we have at least the minimum requirement. If a person wants to be reborn as a human or higher, you need to observe the 5 precepts. So that was what we chanted earlier in the opening slides, the 5 precepts. So that's the moral shame and fear part. So that's for the lay person. You only got 5. The monks have more. So the novice monk have 10, and the fully ordained monk have 200 over, and the nuns, lagi better, fully ordained nuns have 300 over rules. So they have more precepts to kind of manage. Okay, then the 4th one, proficient in learning. So you need to have upgrading, proficient in learning. So not just learning the essential criteria, learning the Dhamma, but you want to talk about survivability. Let's say you want to talk about learning maybe leadership skills, or I don't know, even public speaking. I'm still work in progress. So this is called proficient in learning. You need to upgrade yourself. If not, the religion will be obsolete. Next time people will just go to ChatGPT and find all the answers there. You don't need to come online already. You don't have to come for this talk anymore. So if you want to have this, the Dhamma, the essence of the Dhamma to continue with the proper guidance and context, the teachers, could be monastics or even lay teachers, they need to upgrade, be proficient. So even for these PowerPoint slides, I also need to upgrade myself and prepare the PowerPoint. Then the 5th one, resolute. You need to be firm. It's not I practice halfway, give up. So whatever you're determined to achieve, be patient, stay on path, have this resolution. So now it's 2025. Anybody make any New Year resolutions? Nobody? No resolution? All very contented people. Okay, so in terms of Dhamma teaching or Dhamma practice, we need to have certain resolution to improve. And number 6, mindful, same as the previous one. And number 7, wise. What do you mean by wise? So this term is very vague, to be wise. So the minimum requirement for wisdom is to discern what is unwholesome and what is wholesome. If not, you just go by the labels. People, you need to go by the book to tell you what is wholesome or unwholesome, what can you do, what you cannot do. Actually, for a person with wisdom, whatever is unwholesome, it will lead them to stress. If there's any built-in tension, any built-in stress, then something is unwholesome, something is not right somewhere. And if it leads to peace, then that's something wholesome. Sleeping not counted. Sleeping and idling may lead to certain calmness, that one not counted. You need some skillful act to lead to peace. So a person who is wise will know to differentiate what is wholesome and unwholesome. So that's the 7 qualities. And the next set, there's even more. You think this is enough. Not enough. Okay, next one. 7 factors of enlightenment. So it gets more chim already. So these 7 factors, if you see any Buddha images or statues with like a dragon or a huge serpent covering the Buddha with 7 heads, so it's an artistic representation of these 7 factors of enlightenment. So these 7 factors is actually the benchmark, or basically the indicator of this gateway to the Dhamma. How do you know you practice correctly? Like if let's say a person watched the breath meditation, so many types of breath meditation. Other religions also teach breath meditation, or maybe some other system, their objective is to use the breath to improve their health, not to reach enlightenment. So how do you know whether is it a Buddhist meditation? So like in this case, Venerable Sariputta, the wisest disciple of the Buddha, mentioned that these 7 factors of enlightenment is the gateway to the truth. So if a person experiences these 7 factors of enlightenment in their practice, that means they're on a sure path. It's a sign, it's an indicator you're on the right track. If let's say you practice, the more you practice, the more cheeking, the more frustration, no peace, that means something is wrong. So you need to have these 7 factors. So what are these 7 factors? First one, mindfulness. So that's the first factor. Mindfulness, that means the 4 foundation of mindfulness. Mindful of the body, feelings, mind and Dhamma. I think we covered that in the first lesson. Or mindful of any of your meditation object. You can be mindful of the qualities of the Buddha, mindful of loving kindness, whatever you're mindful with. Then the second point, investigation into phenomenon. So in this case, basically is to investigate impermanence. So these 7 factors of enlightenment is the path of wisdom. Path of wisdom. So you need to investigate impermanence. And number 3, you need to put in energy, put in effort. So that's the third factor. So if you have the first 3 conditions right, it will trigger the 4th factor. So point number 4 to point number 7 is more like the byproduct. Point number 1 to point number 3 actually is like planting the causes. Actually the causes. So for example, I can speak to you about impermanence and all the teachings and the philosophy about Buddhism, or you can be down here listening and agreeing, these teachers say, makes sense. You agree for 1 second. So you have 1 second of right effort. Then once I stop only, or once the teaching is over, or once I finish the sentence, then your mind starts to go all over the place, what to do after this lesson. Do you want to have supper? Where should you go next? What's your assignment? What kind of project you have later on? Then no more effort, no more energy. You're not inputting the energy. There's no more effort being applied. Then you're not fulfilling the criteria. So you need to apply the first three enough until the fourth factor appears. It's just like boiling water. If you have cold water and you put on your, electric stove or your gas stove for 1 second, do you think it will boil? Won't boil, right? So same thing, you need to put on top of the flame or on top of the heat long enough until it starts to boil. So the boiling is like this bliss appearing. So you need to keep applying your contemplation, keep thinking of impermanence until there's this suddenly there's this joy appear. It's not like you imagine something fantasy, then the joy appear. No. You cultivate, think of impermanence, then this joy appear by itself like a byproduct. You don't deliberately think of the joy, but this joy appear by itself. So that's the fourth criteria. And then it will slowly evolve. The joy will disappear. So the disappearance of the joy will be called tranquility. And that absence of joy or that peace, that tranquility, after some time will gain some strength, and we call it concentration. And that concentration will lead to stability of the mind, and we call that equanimity. So that's the 7 factors of enlightenment. So a person who experiences these 7 or any of these 7 may not be enlightened yet. That means you kind of have an indicator, you know the direction to the truth, but still not yet the truth. It's just a gateway. After the gateway, there's still a long journey. So the Buddha mentioned if a person practices this mindful of impermanence, they need to have at least 7 years, practice for 7 years, or if they are very talented, 7 months, or even 7 weeks or 7 days, if you're super talented. But the whole idea is you need to have consistent effort. Consistent effort. So that's the key idea. Okay, then after these 7 factors, you think it's over, and they're still not over. Next. 7 perceptions. So how to maintain this mindfulness and investigation in your daily life. So for a layperson, maybe a bit hard. You just think of the first one we'll do. First one, cultivate perception of impermanence. So that is the baseline, foundation. Some people, they don't think of impermanence, straight away think of something fanciful or something very deep. Then they think of non-self or think of emptiness. Then it's like because impermanence is to overcome attachment. So if you haven't overcome attachment, then a person may contemplate non-self or they contemplate emptiness in terms of attachment, in terms of their ego. So that would be the problem. So it becomes very theoretical. So the whole idea of contemplating impermanence is to synchronize whatever you observe and label it with impermanence. Not to think of the theory of impermanence, It's to make your mind accept or live with impermanence. So that's the idea. So we call it perceptions. Okay, then number 2, egolessness. So that's the non-self part. So again, for this lesson, we won't go through the theory of it. At least, I think we went through on the previous lesson, this Punna, when you go to this dangerous country, the Buddha at least tried to talk to him, give him teaching about non-self. So at least we understand in theory. So how to really experience egolessness or selflessness, you need to keep on contemplating impermanence. Okay, then number 3, impurity of the body. So this one has to do with the human biology and anatomy. And for lay person, I normally don't encourage you all to do for too long. We'll talk about it more in future. I think we talked about it previously also. There's this group of monks who think of impurities of the body and they committed suicide. So a person needs guidance in certain kinds of meditation. And number 4, body in this wretchedness. And number 5, relinquishment. And number 6, dispassion. And number 7, cessation. So number 5 is to let go. Number 6 is more like no more interest, dispassion. And number 7 is cessation, means letting go of this craving. That means reduction, abandoning of craving. So that's the few slight minor differences. About the same thing, 5, 6, 7. Okay, their growth is to be expected, not their decline. And do you think it's still over? Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, now lesser number. After 7, you have 6. 6 things to remember. So the Buddha is like, because he's about to pass away, so a lot of things to say. It's just like, before a person dies, then you ask any last words. They have a lot of things to say, So the Buddha, before he about to pass away, then he has this set of teachings. Of course, not at the last moment itself. They spend over probably like a number of months. Okay, so there are these 6 conditions. Bhikkhus, so long as they attend on each other with loving kindness. So loving kindness is very important. Number 1, through their deeds. Number 2, through their words. And number 3, through their thoughts, both openly and in private. So if you want to live in harmony, you need to have loving kindness. So same in your family or in your workplace, you need to have loving kindness. And number 4, so long as in respect of what they receive as due offerings, even the contents of their alms bowls, they do not make use of them without sharing them with various members of the community. So number 4, that's for the monk side. So for the layperson side, the Buddha or even many of the monks also encourage, if let's say a person wants to make offering to a particular monastic, they have to think, this offering is for all the Sangha. It's not for just one person. Because if you only give to just one person all the time, then it might be you're reducing your merit. You're creating this boundary. You're limiting yourself. So the Buddha said, you have to think of giving it to all the Sangha of all directions. So that is the attitude before doing the dana. Okay, number 5, so long as in company with their brethren, they train themselves openly and in private in the rules of conduct, which are complete and perfect, spotless and pure, liberating, praised by the wise, uninfluenced by mundane concerns, and favorable to concentration of mind. So basically, keep the precept pure, same as the previous point. And number 6, and in company with their brethren, preserve openly and in private the insight that is noble and liberating, that leads one who acts upon it to the utter destruction or suffering. And their growth is to be expected, not their decline. So number 6 is very interesting. The point about insight, that means your realizations. So nowadays this thing is not openly discussed. Like if let's say a person would openly declare, I realize the truth, it would be quite problematic. So in this respect, for the monks, they can declare to other monks, but cannot declare to layperson. There's a reason, because if a monk were to declare to a layperson, let's say a monk were to say, oh, okay, so and so have reached enlightenment, then all the lay devotees will just hoard and flock towards that person. Then the rest of the monks all go hungry. So they create this social problem. So the Buddha encouraged the layperson, you have to think of giving all the Sangha, it's not just one person. So the Buddha even laid down the rule for monastics not to reveal anything to the layperson. So this is for the monastic rules. So that is the point. And nowadays, lagi worse, because nowadays got so many different schools. Each school have their own syllabus or their own criteria on what is the different stages of insight or realization. Only their school is correct, other school is not correct, that kind of stuff. And it's a bit problematic. So if a person were to declare they've understood so and so, the other schools will try to refute, so on and so forth. So it's a bit problematic, and I won't go into details. If you want to talk about openly declaring, there's this term, the Buddha called it lion's roar. That means a person needs to be very courageous to declare. So in the early days of the Buddha kind of declared he's the Buddha, and some of the early chief disciples, they declare they're enlightened. So they draw a lot of unnecessary issues, maybe in the academic field. People from other belief systems, the academics will challenge them in debates. The non-practitioners, or even let's say the superstitious community or the animistic community, will believe, oh, if they're enlightened, they should be free from black magic. Then they cast magic on them. They sometimes poison the food and stuff like that. So a lot of problem. So probably later on in the Buddha's career, then he kind of laid this rule and do not declare. Okay, that's for the safety issue. Okay, next. Okay, that's the end of this PowerPoint. So we still have time to continue to the next PowerPoint, the next file. So in the meantime, while you're preparing the slides, any questions from anyone? No question.
Bante, could I ask a question?
Okay.
Just curious, what would you advise the criteria to be? Let's say if there's an offer to teach Dharma in like those Sunday school.
Okay.
Yeah, is it advisable?
Yeah, you have to check your motivation. If your motivation is wholesome, let's say you want to improve your skill, you want to benefit the children, by all means. So personally, I have volunteered before at the Pokasi Monastery when I was a layperson. I was kind of like headhunted. I was initially helping out in a youth camp at Komeng-san. It's like a combined different temples, the Burmese Buddhist temple, Palelai Buddhist temple, and Wat Ananda. They have this combined youth camp, and some of the so-called Buddhist youth leaders that time was helping out in the Singapore Polytechnic Buddhist Society. So they kind of roped me in to help out as like one of the facilitators and help out in the camp. So some of the Komeng-san staff kind of see me, hey, you quite good with the young people. Then they headhunted me, asked me, hey, become Sunday school teacher. Okay, Lord, try out. And it is through this teaching, then you kind of gain some experience life. Not you come and speak, then got stage fright. So you start off with small crowds, start with small children, not too intimidating. Then you go on with older age group. So it's I would say it's a win-win for both. Win-win for yourself, win-win situation for the recipient also.
But Bante, do I need to have like some qualifications before I teach? Let's say at Komeng-san, or Buddhist fellowship?
I'm not sure about other places. For Comingson, they will have like an interview.
Okay.
Yeah, so different places have their own way of like sieving out the qualifications.
Okay. And thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Good evening, Bante.
Yep.
Yes, I'm Mingxi.
Hi, Mingzi.
Yes, Bante, just now you were talking about the seven bhujangas, the seven factors of enlightenment.
Yep.
And mindfulness, Dhammavichaya, Virya. After that will be the piti. Now, does it go on auto mode? After piti, it will go into tranquility.
If you keep applying the first three factors, keep on being mindful of impermanence. Yeah.
So that means when you are at the phase of joy, you keep your mind on the joy or on the body.
Mindfulness of impermanence. It can be the impermanence of the joy or impermanence of the body, because there are four foundations. You can pay attention to anyone.
Mindfulness of impermanence.
Yes.
That means we wish at the back of the mind that this joy will also go away.
Yes.
Okay. And that's the effort put into it.
Yes.
And the knowledge is the Dhammavichaya. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Anyone else? If not, I move on with the presentation. Okay, then we shall just continue. Who is presenting now?
Kim Fat will be presenting.
Okay, then you can click. Okay, so this is the photo of my one of my camps, like interfaith retreat between the Catholic friars of the Franciscan order and the Plum Village. So you initially, if you look, you see all of them wearing black, right? How to tell the difference between the Catholics and the Buddhist monks. So if you see them wearing the white belt, so that's the Catholic Franciscan friars. If the people wearing the black robes, they don't wear the white belt, then these are the monks at the Plum Village. So this one is in Thailand, Plum Village in Thailand. So that was like quite a number of years back. So again, it's an interfaith kind of camp. So why do we have this kind of inter-religious activities? Okay, next slide. Since we are on the theme of violence or non-violence, we must first identify there is violence also perpetrated to from one community to another, not because of religious reasons, but because of probably personal greed or anger. Then they kind of use Buddhism as a face or as a mask to perpetrate this discrimination or violence to the other communities. So the first one is political oppression. Maybe in some other countries, in some Buddhist countries, some monks set up a political party. So like say Sri Lanka, they have this BBS, Bodu Bala Sena. So it's led by this monk, and he's known to be kind of like stirring violence or have some kind of hate speech. So he was even charged in court, and this is a picture of him kind of taken away to like the prison truck. So that's one example, case study. So what really happened, I do not know. What did he actually say? I do not know. But this is again newspaper report. Next. And these are maybe more well known in probably the past few years. They tried to perpetuate the conflict between the Muslims and the Buddhists. Actually, the Burmese issue it's got to do with the militant issue. Foreign militants come to this Rohingya region to train up the so-called the illegal people who stay there or grow up there, and make them extremists or become freedom fighters. So it's more of a national security issue, but then the Western reporters go and take this monk out of context, take the issue out of context, go and find some so-called extremist monk, and they say, oh, okay, this extremist Buddhism or extremist monk perpetrate the violence between the Buddhists and the Muslims. So it's a total different issue, but for his case, this case of this Venerable Viratu, he's known to sort of promote hate speech between the different communities, to kind of like boycott the Muslim shops and stuff like that. But it's against the monastic rules to promote violence. So according to some interview, he himself also said he never promote violence. He never encouraged the devotees to kill or harm the Muslims. So again, it's the Western media taking out of context. Okay, next. Okay, golden rule. Okay, so this one is very common in all religion, to do good. So if you do not want any harm to be done to yourself, then do not do unto others. So this is like a very basic kind of moral code in life. But how does it apply? Is there anything more in religion other than this one? Because this is very basic. Even non-religious people also know. If they have a conscience, they think, I do not want to be harmed, so shouldn't harm others. Sometimes secular law, the law of the country, will settle it already. Will kind of solve this issue. Okay, next. So we have to re-emphasize again right speech. We've gone through that in the first lesson. Please click on the few points. Click. Okay, yeah. Next. One more. Okay, so this is the right speech part. So I think we covered that in the first lesson. Abstain from lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, from idle chatter. So number 2 are divisive speech. So even a person may be speaking the truth. If you go up and split up communities, it's against the Buddha's teaching. And the Noble Eightfold Path don't encourage this kind of divisive speech and any harmful speech, abusive speech. If you say anything negative, anything harmful, abusive, not encouraged. If you tell lies, anything untruthful. So especially if you want to comment about another faith, another religion, first and foremost, how much do we really know about the other religion? So if we make statements about the other religion, how factual is it? Yeah, so number one point is to avoid from this untruth. And same thing, if let's say, if you look at the chart on the right, the flow chart, number 1, whether it's true or not true. If it's true, then you go down. Beneficial or not beneficial. So let's say we have something in our scripture that mentions something not so nice about another faith system, and you have a friend of that particular faith system, of that religion. Do you go and say this to your friend from another religion? Not beneficial, right? In fact, it might promote aversion. So sometimes you have to know the context. If it's not beneficial, don't say it. Don't say it. Unless they really want to know. Their intention is more like comparative study. They want to know forever, whatever positive reason. If they really want to know, they request, then you might share, and the context is not to convert them, not to dispute them, not to have a debate, but it's because you want to know that I share with you. So it's then they are more accepting. If they do not request, then there's a higher chance for them not to accept. So interestingly, in the monastic rules, there are actually 16 precepts for sharing Dhamma, 16 precepts for teaching Buddhism. So a lot of these lay people do not know. So sometimes you might see a lot of people start forwarding Dhamma quotes, forwarding talks, forwarding message to your friend, then become like spamming, So imagine you go to shopping mall, people distribute flyers to you, right? How many of you keep the flyers? If the product is not to your interest, what do you do to the flyer? Throw in the rubbish bin, right? So same thing lah. So the Dhamma, if you being shoved by the Dhamma a lot of times, what do you do to the Dhamma? 1 year in, 1 year out. Over time, if it's too much rubbish, you might get aversion. You might have aversion to the Dhamma. They might backfire. Next time you see a Dhamma talk, you see a Dhamma message in your phone, you straight away want to delete it. Or you just want to skip the message. So it becomes aversion over time. So the monks have these 16 precepts and before sharing the Dhamma. So most of them is actually, if there is no request, if the person do not request it, do not teach. So some of the examples they'll give you. If a person is holding a weapon, do not teach Dhamma to them. So it's a metaphor. If they are hostile, do not teach Dhamma to them. Or number 2, you have this thing. If they are standing or seated higher than you, do not share Dhamma with them. Do not teach Dhamma to them. That means if they are more egoistic than you, then you shouldn't share with them. Because if you share with them, it's like they will think they are high and mighty, then a bit hard to get through them. Then a lot of other case studies. If you have someone holding a walking stick, also cannot share with them. If someone is older than you, you want to share with them, they think, hey, I eat salt more than I eat rice, Who are you to share with me? They think they're more experienced than you. So again, you only share when they request, or unless they are really sick, then they cannot request. Then if you find that they're in a desperate situation, you think certain Dhamma is beneficial for them, then you share with them tactfully. Okay, that's the precepts for teaching Dhamma. So laypersons may not be aware of this, but monastics have these 16 precepts. So that's why for this particular series of talks, Louis invited me to share the Dhamma. So usually the organizers will know, the participants do not know. They expect, hey, monks should share. They expect monks to share. Actually no, monks cannot suka come and share. Imagine someone else, maybe another monastic come in and barge in and start opening the mic and start sharing. Very disruptive, right? Or anybody come and just open the mic and start want to share. So it becomes very disruptive. So we only share when there's a request. So likewise, when I open the floor, do you have any questions? If I ask, then you share. It's not like suka anybody just open the mic and start make random speeches. It'd be very disruptive. Okay, next. Okay, so the Dhamma is not for debate. So the teachings, the scriptures and everything are actually medicine to apply and overcome our defilement. So that is actually the purpose of the Dhamma, and not to find fault with other doctrines, not to have a debate. So if a person goes to debate, then it's not the intention. So I just briefly read. So these are like examples of debate. I'm the one who understands this doctrine and discipline. How could you understand this doctrine and discipline? You are practicing wrongly. I'm practicing rightly. I'm being consistent. You are not. What you took so long to think out has been refuted. Your doctrine has been overthrown. You are defeated. He abstains from debates such as this. This too is part of his virtue. So the Buddha himself do not encourage and do not engage in debate. He also encourages the practitioners to not engage in debate, because it's actually wasting time. If a person is not ready, they are not ready to receive the instruction or the teachings, then no matter how you debate, then it's basically a waste of time. Okay, next. Okay, so the idea, not just between different religion, sometimes between different schools of Buddhism, we call it intra-faith. So sometimes there might be also intra-faith debate. So actually by right shouldn't debate should have a proper discussion, kind of comparison. Okay, so for clearing misconception, if there's some other school or some other religion that do not know your doctrines or practice, and they have some wrong misconception or stereotype, and they say something wrong about your style or your school, then if somebody dispraise me, or dispraise of the Dhamma, or dispraise in the Sangha, you should not give way to resentment. You should not get angry towards them. Then, in fact, you should check if the mind is at peace. Then you should just clarify. Once they finish a statement, then you clarify what is not correct, what is the false, what are the misconceptions, and point out to them, for such and such reason is false, this is untrue, you cannot find such thing among us. So this is the protocol to kind of clarify this misconception. And vice versa, the next slide. If somebody praise you, praise your school or praise your religion, if somebody speak in praise of me or praise of the Dhamma or the Sangha, you should not give way to jubilation. Do not get too overjoyed. So you should have some equanimity. You should acknowledge what is fact as fact. Then you should say, yes, that's true, that is found among us. So you can find this also in a few of the suttas in the Digha Nikaya. Next. So in this same Brahmajala Sutta, the Buddha mentioned all the 60 overviews, the different views in the different religious practice. And some of the views can be found in Buddhism, supposedly the mundane right view, such as rebirth, such as karma, and heaven and hells and so on, the different realms and so on and so forth. So whatever belief system, if a person still has greed, still has stress, that means you haven't truly achieved. That means you have not lived. That means have not truly achieved the right view. Still have not become one with the right view. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the Buddha gives these different points of view. So whatever practitioner, whether they're eternalists or is endless, equivocators, fortuitous, originationists, speculators, annihilationists, maintains doctrines of immortality, doctrines of nibbana even. So whatever theory, if you just cling on, understand academically only, in theory, but in practice you have greed. You do not see the truth, you haven't experienced the truth yet. You still have agitation and vacillation, immersed in craving. That means you still do not know and do not see. Still have not achieved the true right view. So that is taught by the Buddha. Okay, next. So the more common simplified version is this Kalama Sutta. Instead of explaining all the different various viewpoints, these Kalamas approach the Buddha. There are so many different schools in India, so many different teaching, which is right, which is wrong. So the Buddha said, okay, put aside all these preconceived ideas and give 10 kind of criteria. The Buddha said, do not believe simply anything because you heard it or handed down for many generations or because it's spoken or rumored. Do not believe simply because it's in your religious books or by the authority of your teachers and elders. So that includes whatever the Buddha said also. So whatever observation and analysis, if you find it's good, beneficial for yourself and others, and praised by the wise, generally praised by the wise people who are wholesome, they praise it. So you need a few criteria. First is wholesome for yourself and others, not just wholesome for yourself and disadvantageous to others, or wholesome for others but end up you become self-sacrificing, unbeneficial for you. It has to be generally wholesome for yourself and others, both ways. And ideally also praised by the wise. So once you have these criteria, then go and do it. So the Buddha further on taught these 4 sublime states. You practice loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity, so that fulfills the criteria. It's not harmful for yourself, not harmful for others. And these states of mind are generally praised by the wise. In all religions, they promote compassion, loving kindness, and so on. So the Buddha at the end talk about the different sort of religious views. If there is such thing as karma, if there's really such thing as karma, then you do all these good deeds, then good for you, lor. You practice these 4 sublime states, good for you, lor. Then you have good result. If there is no such thing as karma, then also never mind. At least you do some goodness, then that's it lah. But the next 2 points got to do with afterlife. If there is such thing as afterlife, whether there's a heaven or hell, then good for you, lor. You do good things, then you end up in heaven lah. But if there's no such thing as afterlife, YOLO, you live only once, then also good for you, lor. Good for you lah. You do something wholesome, then that's it lah. End of story. So the Buddha said, at least if you do good, it's a win-win situation regardless of belief system. So continue to overcome this greed and anger, overcome this craving, do good, do positive. Okay, next. And to further reinforce this kind of, we call it inclusiveness. The Buddha actually taught to this Vajjiya. So someone asked a question in the first lesson. So I've forgotten the name of this sutta. So yes, this is the person, Vajjiya. So it's a name of an ascetic. He came up to the Buddha and asked the Buddha, so many religions in India, which practice is correct? So the Buddha mentioned, whatever observance, whatever practice you do, if your unskillful qualities grow, your greed and anger grow, you become more selfish, then you don't practice it, or you should troubleshoot, look into it. Is it the way you interpret wrongly or the way you practice it wrongly? But if let's say everyone's you tried everything and still wrong, then you should do something about it. And the second point, if let's say your unskillful qualities wane, your greed and anger reduce, and your skillful qualities grow, you become more compassionate, more wise, then continue that practice. So the Buddha gave a very general answer. So it has to do with being in line with the Dhamma, the universal kind of Dhamma, not the Buddhist kind of Dhamma only. So it's not restricted to Buddhism only. Whatever Dhamma that lead to peace, then that's the correct Dhamma. Okay, next. Okay, so the next topic, a bit more gray area. We talk about different belief systems, and sometimes maybe spawning out of Buddhist concepts or making use of Buddhist concepts, then there's a development of cults or cult groups. Yeah, so these cult groups, how to identify whether they are cults. Sometimes they claim to be Buddhism, or they claim to be Buddhist or using Buddhist concepts, and you have to check lah. So the first few points is their belief system, their doctrines. Yeah, do their teachings deviate from the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path? And who are they worshipping, or who are they paying respects to? Do they pay respect to the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or they pay respect to their leaders only, or some other figures other than the Triple Gem, or they do not even pay respect to Triple Gem, just pay respect to other figures? So that would be like one of the main indicator that is like deviating. Then we have this thing called extremist views. Now only their teaching is correct, the other teaching is wrong. Yeah, so that is called extremist, or we call it exclusive kind of view. So extremist view would be like, for example, like the bottom right picture. If it has to do with any kind of harm, anything unwholesome, then there is an extreme view. Okay, then the next one, behavior. Do they observe the precepts? So if, let's say, basic moral ethics, if they cannot even observe, then you can forget about higher teachings. And the next one, exclusive. Their group is correct. So same applies with mainstream Buddhism also. The different Buddhist school, they start to say, oh, only their practice is correct, other school practice is wrong. Then it's like you then become misrepresenting the Buddha's teaching, because the Buddha teach so many teachings. You're saying only one teaching is correct, and whatever the Buddha teaches wrong, then it's like being disrespectful to the Buddha. Yeah, so a person need to contextualize what they mean by their group is the only correct group. Okay, then the next one, manipulation and fear. So this is the main red flag to tell whether it's a cult, kind of cult group. If let's say their recruitment method is dishonest, they tell you, if you come join this group, definitely you get wealth, you get health and whatever reason, and once they join already, then nothing happened. Or personality cult, if let's say their cult leader claim supernatural feats, claim they are the Buddha, or claim they are reincarnation of the Buddha, claim they are enlightened, or claim they are supernatural powers. It can happen in mainstream Buddhism also. If they claim such a thing, so that's why earlier on I mentioned for the monastic rules, monks are not supposed to disclose to layperson. If you do that, all kinds of wrong reasons, people will just flock to you, and whatever you say becomes like the gold standard. So if a person is not enlightened and they teach the wrong thing, then it will lead the whole congregation astray. So that's the danger of having this cult kind of mentality. Okay, so all these fear or manipulation method, vow, you have this vow, make vows not to leave the group, if not something bad will happen to you. I cannot share the teachings to public. So right now it's they even live stream to Zoom, right? Or we record and even upload to this YouTube, so it's too public really. Isolation, that means they only can stick to their community, stick to their group, cannot go and join other religious services from other Buddhist schools or other religion. So you have all these red flags. Then you have the last case, scandals, exploitation. They will tell the devotees, come do dana, exploit you, make merit, ask you to give more and give more. So some of them also may appear in mainstream Buddhism, but if let's say for newly formed cult groups, if the founder of the cult group fall into this the first place, fall into scandals and exploitation cases, then kind of spoil the reputation of the whole group. But if let's say established religion for a long time, because the Buddha or the founders of the religion do not have these kind of issues, then whatever practitioners down the line have certain scandals, then we call it, oh, this is an isolated case. So the whole idea is, whatever community you go to, make sure you go with open eyes. You need to ehipasiko, need to see for yourself, need to investigate whether the leaders and the practitioners in the community are wholesome, and that will be safe for you. Okay, next. Okay, so I'm going to end my sharing because now it's 9 o'clock. I open the floor to Q&A. Any questions on the ground?
Okay. All right, so if you have a question, you can unmute and ask Bante, or you can type in the chat box.
Good evening, Bante.
Yes.
Yeah, nowadays in fact, every week or every now and then we see some monasteries or temples trying to collect funds, especially New Year, lighting lamps, lighting lanterns, and all this in the name of the phrase is like this to make merits. If the idea of giving is to collect merit, then I think isn't it something like you are doing something not actually for the community. You are actually doing it because you want the merit.
Yeah, very good point. So nowadays is a very common practice for most organizations to have some kind of fundraising. So of course, you cannot expect everyone to have pure intention straight away. If everybody has pure intention, means everyone is enlightened really. So you need to start off from somewhere. Some people might do these acts of generosity out of certain reasons, but you might need to give them some push, some incentive. You can tell them, good karma or good merit, then they might want to do it. May not be very meritorious, but at least there's some merit.
Yeah, but isn't it sort of misleading a little bit? Because you are soliciting funds for your building or for whatever it is. I understand that it is good, of course, good to be able to support this type of activities. But at the back of the mind of the donor, if the donor thinks, I'm giving because I want my merit, then to me the meritorious deed becomes non-meritorious.
Not saying totally no merit in one of the Dana Sutta. Yeah, diluted. Venerable Sariputta gave a whole range of different intentions of giving and what kind of heavens they go to. Yeah, so like giving with to make merit is one of the spectrum, not the highest, but at least there's some merit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So usually for the Buddhist side, because the monastic rules and the monks cannot be the one raising the money. So usually it's the lay committee, then they organize or make this initiative. So it's not the monks doing it, it's the lay committee doing this fundraising. Anyone? All quiet today. Today no video are not interesting, right? Someone unmuted.
Good evening, Bante. Can I
Yeah.
just ask one question?
Mm.
It's regarding because sometimes through our spiritual journey, right, we will actually meet teachers that we have more affinity to. But at the same time, there is also level of certain attachment to the teachers and their teachings. And the positive side, I can see that it made you a bit more motivated to study and to practice because you get inspiration from the teachers. But how do I balance that with actually, don't have that attachment? Because being lay person, you tend to like certain teachers a bit more, then you follow them a bit more. And then any projects that the teacher kind of like have, then you tend to want to kind of like contribute a bit more to compared to kind of like, other teachers that you're kind of not so familiar with. And I feel that actually creates certain level of, I don't know which to categorize it. Like, is it attachment or greed that is, because when you mention to give not to just one, but it's actually the intention to give to all the Sangha. But I find that normally in my mind, I still have like, it's to my teacher kind of thing. So how do you balance that? And then do you need to actually specifically practice to let go of this attachment?
Yeah, very good question, Salvi. So again, it works in both ways. So in the conventional setting, we must know that our resources are not infinite. You cannot go around every Sangha member that requests for their project and you supply everything for them, right? So it's impossible. So there is a limit to your resources. So I think it's all right to prioritize, but in the back of the mind, then you say it's for the welfare of all the Buddhist community, is meant for all the Sangha. So that could be one way to remind yourself to be boundless, don't restrict yourself. And the second point is that I think there's nothing wrong sticking to a teacher if, let's say, you've done your homework, you've done your sort of background check, and your current situation, this would be the best teacher already. Personally, myself also, I sometimes, different occasion, I might have different teachers I prefer, or different teachers specialize in different things. So you need to look for different teachers that specialize in different kind of teaching. Maybe some teachers are very good academically, but don't know how to meditate. Or some teachers very good at meditation, but do not know so much about academic. So different situation, different problem, you need to go to different people for different solution lah. So it's good to have sometimes a few in mind rather than just one. But if you have one, that's also fine. In the monastic point of view, we have this thing called seeking dependence. Seeking dependence. So in the Tibetan tradition, they extend out to like guru devotion. So the lay follower just find the guru that they have inclination with, then they learn from one guru. So for the monastics, especially for the new monastics, they have this concept called seeking dependence of a mentor. So either they follow their preceptor, the person who ordained them, or they find a mentor, somebody knowledgeable that they can learn under their wing for 5 years. So that's for the monastic side. So there is like one person you need to stick to, if not too many red Indian chief. One monk tell you, hey, you need to meditate more. Then another monk tell you, hey, you must memorize your chanting. So many things to do, so many instructions. You get very confused. So there is certain rationale for certain groups that tell you, I don't go around learn too many things from too many teachers. You must know the context. If let's say you have already done your research, then you want to follow and stick to one instruction, then yes, then you follow one teacher. But if let's say you are new, you still don't have the foundation, then you're still like exploring kind of thing, then like sticking to one teacher might be a bit intimidating.
Thank you, Bante. Got another question.
Okay.
It's regarding sharing of the Dhamma, because I see from the diagram, right? Like, so how do you determine whether you are actually, how to say, qualified to share the Dhamma? Because I definitely don't have the formal training, doesn't go through like. Because sometimes during discussion, people ask, what is your thinking? What's your take on this or this thing, right? So I share, but sometimes I'm not sure whether what I'm sharing is right, or even if, let's say, the concept, even if, let's say, that teaching may come from a teacher, right? So, for example, if I attended the seminar as a 2-day session, right? Then, if let's say my understanding of what Bante shared, I interpret it very differently from what is the correct one. How do I know that am I interpreting correctly? And then in my mind it's correct, so I just share. But what if, let's say, turn out that understanding is not right down the road? They were like, okay, do I need to I need to find that person today? Say, by the way, it's wrong. So if, let's say, that happened, how is it better to just refrain from sharing unless you are kind of like already properly trained and you have the qualification?
Okay, very good question. So sharing doesn't require academic qualification, depends on context. If let's say some university conference, they want to invite some scholar or professor to share, then if let's say you do not have the qualification, then of course you can decline the invitation. But if let's say the sharing is more on the personal basis, somebody admire your, peacefulness or your way you live your life, then they want to find out more. Hey, what do you do? What you practice to have this? Then you share, nothing wrong. So you share through your own lived experience, not through what the scriptures say and so on. So it's more on a personal sharing. So now this is like more the popular platform in a lot of even in the interfaith kind of dialogue, they will just say, I will share on my personal perspective. I'm not representing the religion to say. Okay, all right.
Bante, there's a question in the chat from Monfong. So if the superior is verbally abusive to you or left you alone in the office most of the time, how should I use Dhamma to handle this?
Okay, yeah, so this one depends on your Kung Fu, your skill. If let's say you are very advanced in your practice, and you radiate loving kindness, make sure you don't get angry. So that's for the internal part, internal defense, internal solution. External solution, the superior still scold you, they still abuse you. So external solution, you need to have a dialogue, have a proper chit-chat session with your superior. Find an appropriate time. You could have a discussion over coffee or tea, treat him coffee or treat her coffee. Have proper dialogue, ask them why they say such a thing in such a manner, or how you perceive in such a manner. You need to think through what you have to say in a non so-called offensive manner, that try to make this diplomacy work. So that's for the external solution. If let's say you try everything, you be very nice, you talk to the superior, and they're just right down mean, and they just it's like down, they just write down they want to be nasty to you for no other reason. And then you should reconsider. If let's say the work environment is too toxic, and you find that you cannot cope no matter how much practice you have, how much loving kindness you have, you find that your health get back to worse, or your social life get back to worse, everything get back to worse, then you should consider changing your workplace. Yeah, nothing wrong changing your workplace. Even for monastics, even they talk about the 7 conditions of welfare, and there's other scriptures that talk about, let's say if a person enter a monastic enter a monastery, all the practitioners are not well practiced. They don't practice mindfulness, they don't practice correctly, then we should now try to leave the place. Yeah, so that is the advice. So same thing, if the workplace is too toxic, very unwholesome in both their behavior, their speech, very unwholesome, then you should try, or you consider leaving the place.
Bante,
Yep.
what would be your advice for us when we go to work to maintain peace of mind, given that now the pace of work is pretty fast and tasks, a lot of things are like last minute. Yeah, so how can we maintain that peace of mind while going to work so that the stress is down to a minimum?
Okay. A very good question. So this is a very practical question. So earlier on we talked about the 7 conditions of welfare. One of them is enjoy going to solitude. So every once in a while you need to find some time to go to your own solitude. It could be like a daily basis. You need to find some quiet time to meditate. The timing up to you. You can set how short or how long you want. But at least once a week if you want, then you go to the place of worship, Buddhist center, Buddhist temple, find some time to meditate, or find a class, meditation class, learn some meditation. So that would help. And the main thing is, once you know the technique to find a peace of mind, then you try to apply it in your daily life. So some of the practices that you can practice 2 in 1 while you're on the go, is like recollection of the Buddha, or Nian Fo. Think of the Buddha's qualities, recite the Buddha's name, think of the Dhamma, think of the Sangha, think of your precepts, let me recollect your precepts. And the 5th one is recollecting all your good deeds, all the charity you've done before. Yeah, then the 6th one is recollecting the Deva qualities, so any kind of deities that you worship, you admire certain qualities, what kind of virtues they have, and you recollect that virtue. Yeah, so that is the 6th quality, 6 reflections. So you can do it on the go. So things like the sublime stage, you can do it on the go also. And loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. Like a lot of people, they learn breath meditation. So that one a bit hard to practice on the go. That one, the instruction, you require to be seated. Seated. So a lot of people, when they learn breath meditation, they will tell you, I cannot apply in workplace. You need to learn other style. So that's my advice.
Okay. And Bante, I've another question.
Okay.
Since New Year is coming, right? How does in Buddhism, is there any information regarding like feng shui and good fortune? How is it related?
Okay, at least in the Theravada scriptures I know of, there is no teaching of feng shui and fortune. We acknowledge there are existing practices of like fortune telling, palm reading and stuff like that. They exist, but the Buddha do not teach them because they do not lead to reduction of craving. So if you're a serious practitioner, you want to have fortune, you want to have wealth, you need to plant the causes for wealth. So you need to be hardworking, you need to save, you need to invest in right places, you should not spend money on vice activities. So a lot of things the Buddha teach. So the Buddha teach all this also.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone has a question for Bante?
Yes. Follow up on Sister Sharon's question about the feng shui, all this thing, right? Because normally with New Year coming, it's quite common people to want to, all the malls they have, your fortune for the next year, whether you are whatever zodiac you are, right? So sometimes I can't help it, but I'll go creeping in and just read, next year will be a good year for me. Okay, good. So it gives me a bit of like a feeling of a certain, it's not certainty, I know, right? But you just feel that you're a bit more confident in facing your next year. But sometimes you just certain fortune, or you may have sickness. I'm like, okay, maybe I need to, make sure I do my general checkup, all this thing, right? But I also understand that normally it's not encouraged as a practitioner to dabble in this sort of thing. But I think the curiosity in me can't help it. I kind of want to pick in the future whether is it good or bad. So is it something that I really have to kind of like let go, or any kind of way to kind of overcome this stuff? I think it's a bit of I don't know what is it actually. Thank you.
Okay. I won't say totally overcome. That this kind of thing is very common on newspapers or whatever. So you sometimes might accidentally glance onto them. I think it's good to have a comparison. Different cultures have different kind of zodiac. The West have their own animals, the Chinese have their own set of animals, different creatures. So it's very different in the first place. And sometimes if you compare, you might get very different readings. For example, maybe in the West, let's say I'm born in July, then they say I'm Cancer. Then the Chinese zodiac say I'm the year of the ox. Then you compare all the reading, how come the reading different? Yeah, so sometimes the readings that they give publicly are very general, can apply to anybody. You can born in any year, any month, it applies to you also. Very general. Yeah, so these are the ones that's publicly displayed. There are some the Thai they call vicha. That means some knowledges. There's some practitioners in these arts. They are a bit more specific. You need to really go to them to get the fortune. Some of them might be accurate. Then of course, there are lots of scammers also. So again, we don't depend our happiness on this kind of thing. We keep on focusing on planting the causes. Keep on doing the good deeds, thoughts, speech, and deeds. Yeah.
Ante, I have one question.
Okay.
So just now, within the talk, there was one part that said that we will meet and disperse peacefully and in harmony.
Yep.
So, in a situation whereby we meet peacefully and in harmony, then in the middle, discuss, become not in harmony and not in peace. What would be your suggestions or tools how to make it end with peace and harmony?
So this one depends on the skill of the
skill cannot make it
group
one.
chairperson or the facilitator. Yeah, so among the group, you need to identify this facilitator to tell people to have half time or chill, have a break, or to re-divert the question and so on. So this one requires again some skill lah. So the facilitation, there's like facilitation workshop, how to stop and even bring these uncomfortable conversations to sharing moments, and have stop the certain person and have the so-called victim that's hurt to have their airtime to share their views and stuff like that. So this one require some upgrading and some practice.
Will you be teaching us the upgrading skills and Gonggu sometime down the road?
Facilitation skill, I think there are some facilitators, not here. You can ask Sister Karen. I think Sister Chingwei can be one of them. They are trained facilitators, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So the main thing is, before you start the conversation, must set ground rules first, So you start off with full value commitment. So make sure everyone in the group must agree certain values. If they don't agree certain values, then cannot start the meeting. For example, if I speak, you cannot speak, for example. Everybody must be respectful, open-minded, whatever. Everybody must agree to certain rules to that discussion before they start.
So if it's a weekly team meeting, so every week I have to reinstate the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, in a way, briefly go through, yeah.
Okay, can, thank you. I shall try and let you know.
Okay. Anyone else? We have like 4 more minutes.
Santi,
Okay.
last week session, right? You talked about like a non-violence in terms of a country.
Mm-hmm.
So how will it apply in the context of country national security? Because I do think that sometimes, hopefully it won't happen, but sometimes war can happen is because some country feel that they have to attack before being attacked. And then if, let's say, that is the decision made by a country, right? And then the soldier is the one who have to go to the front line. But let's say it's in Buddhism, you don't want to kill someone. So how will it works? Kind of like, for yourself, if let's say you're actually serving in the military, and then you are being faced in such a situation, do you actually opt not to kill?
Okay, very good.
Yeah, because I just want to understand because I don't know.
Yeah, so I used to serve 2 years in my NS. Yeah, so this question also came up in my mind about the killing part. So fortunately, Singapore hopefully won't get into any war. But when we were doing guard duty, we are issued rifle and live rounds, live bullets and stuff like that. So we were taught to follow certain protocols. If any intruder arrive or bypass or trespass your certain boundary, the first thing to do is not to shoot them. First thing to do is give them verbal warning, shout them, and ask them to leave the premise. And if they do not want to leave, they continue to enter, they want to trespass, also don't shoot them first, shoot the sky. Shoot the sky. So it's like warning shot, scare them away. And if they still approach, then we can actually shoot their leg. Not shoot their vital organs or kill them, shoot their leg. That means to make them immobile. Yeah, so I think warfare, if a person truly want to practice these Buddhist values, if let's say they're a soldier and you're ordered to shoot the enemy, then you shoot the leg or maybe Ajahn Brahm shoot to miss. So in the Vietnam War, there's this research or survey being done to the the Vietnam War soldiers, American soldiers. Some of them were ordered to shoot the villagers. So a lot of them, probably they brought up in religious values, Christian values. They feel that they're innocent, they're not They're not soldiers. Why shoot them for what? So they shoot lah, but they shoot to miss. So you see them opening fire, but none of the bullets hit the target. So you can choose to do that. You're following orders. Yeah? But of course, as a monk, I will tell you, don't shoot to kill lah. Definitely, try not to harm. But if let's say there is a case to shoot, most of the time in war exercise, like I was in this armor unit, they have these like ATAC. So we're given like this. I'm not sure whether it's confidential information should share. But anyway, there's war exercises. So we are supposed to follow instruction of the commanders. We were not given live rounds. It's just fake, the empty bullets. And there's like a simulation exercise. So somebody will give you like a scenario. Okay, you open fire. Okay, you die, you get injured. So it's like a scenario-based kind of exercise. So based on this situation, how should you do? How should you bandage? How should you do this or how should you do that? So most of us are not really prepared for war. But if let's say there is such a case, then we follow orders. And in our mind, the intention is not to annihilate, not to destroy. So like I shared in the previous the lesson, there's a sutta. The soldier, if they have the intention to annihilate, to destroy a lot of aversion, then that's a very bad karma. So that will make one reborn in the lower realms. But if the person follow the orders, the intention is to defend, to protect innocent people, some wholesome motivation, it's not purely out of anger, then you don't kill, or you just maybe follow Geneva Convention, you just capture or just injure and capture. Still not too bad, Alright. So may not make sense to the women folk, but so that's 9:30. We'll carry on more on the next lesson.